Hey guys, happy Thanksgiving Eve to all of you viewers. As Uncle Phil calls my YouTube fans and friends, he calls them my fellow followers. Anyway, hope everybody's doing good. So, a while back I had given you a tip that I would do a Let's Talk About segment about 5.0 Mustangs. So, tonight's the night. I'm in the mood to talk about it, so let's get into this. Start at the beginning. Prior to about 1990, I guess, when I was about 19 years old, I had never set foot in any kind of Fox body Mustang. The first one I ever had after that, at that point, was about 1991, and my dad bought me a four-cylinder 1986 Mustang Coupe with a four-speed manual transmission. It was blue. So a notchback, a coupe, and just a regular old four banger. You know, you call them a four banger. And drove that car for a while. It was just one he bought for me. I didn't have to pay for it, so I abused it as much as you can abuse a four-cylinder Mustang. And it held up fine. I think I passed it along to my older brother. He needed a car at some point, so he drove it, and then I don't know where that car ended up at, but it was still running fine. We never managed to tear it up or blow it up or anything like that. It was very dead slow. It was the slowest Mustang I've probably ever been in my life. So that was the first one. And then I passed on from having any kind of Mustangs for a couple years. I was bouncing around. I'd started to work on my own and earn my own money. But I had no inkling that I'd ever want a 5.0 Mustang or another Fox body at all. I mean, that car didn't make any kind of impression on me. I was like, I like other stuff. So, the first thing that happened was I was working pretty steady, and so like everybody who's debt-free and doesn't hardly have any bills and still lives at home and is making a little bit over minimum wage, I decided I need to go get in debt and buy a new vehicle. That's what everybody does. That's what I did. So at that point, I got a bunch of pictures here. I'll try to do this in 20 minutes. We'll try to get through this. At that point, I bought, that's not the picture I want. Hang on. Somewhere in here, I have a picture. I bought a 1993 Isuzu pickup. There it is, right here. Slideshow. Sorry for the blur. It was an old regular style camera. I bought that truck in 1993. I bought it in 93 and it had about 1,000 miles on it. It was a demo. It was a four-cylinder, had air conditioning. That was the only option. I paid $11,000 for it and drove it for 50. I put 50,000 miles on that truck in a year, if you could believe that. Maybe just over a year. And so anyway, I was driving that, and I had happened to meet up with a couple guys through a mutual friend. One of them had a 5.0 Mustang, an 89 GT, and so I got hooked up with those guys, and we started riding around and drinking a little bit of beer and stuff like that, and I got my first taste of a 5.0 Mustang, and I was hooked. I'm telling you, I was hooked. So of course, I had that truck and had a loan on it, and the truck's value was going way down. So, anyway, I decided that I was going to buy a 5.0 Mustang. I didn't care where it was, when it was, how much it was, how much I had to pay for it. Didn't care about any of that. I just wanted one. They had one, and I started meeting some other people who had them. We went out and raced, street race, went to the drag strip. I wanted one. I was going to have one. So I made the most stupid financial decision I've ever made in my life, which cost me a lot of money and a lot of repercussions from years onward. And I bought a 1993 GT, and that's it right there. That's my first ever 5.0 burnout I ever did. And that car was a terrible deal. I bought it from a Ford dealership, and we just happened to be driving by one night, saw it sitting out by the road. And it was a year old. It already had 40-something thousand miles on it. It was red with a gray interior, 5-speed, of course. You did not ever buy an automatic. And without getting into a big saga, I kept that car about 2 years and paid $365 a month for that thing. And by the end of about 2 years of it, into a 4-year loan, I hated it. I hated that car so bad. I mean, we're still into 5.0s, but you know, I didn't have any money to do anything to it. I could barely buy tires for it. I drove it every day, and it had, in 2 years, that's how much I used to drive just on my own, not even for work. I was not even doing that kind of work that I do now. In a little under 2 years, I had put over 100. It had over 100,000 miles on it. So I never did really much to it. I put a set of headers on it, swapped around some mufflers, some tires, and stuff like that. And raced it a lot, abused it, and anyway, it ended up. I'm not gonna make it sound any better than it was. I got drunk one night here in town in Huntsville over here, and drove home, and thank God I didn't hit anybody, but I had a bad wreck on the way home because it was raining. It wasn't raining, it was actually foggy, and I knew the road I was on, but I was trying to count the curves. And long story short, I expected a right hand sweep and turn, and it was a left hand, and I went off the road and flipped it 3 or 4 times. And of course I came out of it without a scratch on it, but the car got totaled. So it got repossessed, and that's what I'm saying. It cost me, I got a DUI, it cost me all kinds of, that's a learning experience. If you don't ever have that happen to you, count your blessings. So it went away, and somehow or another, for whatever reason, I had the idea a couple 3 months before then that something, I don't know if it's just one of those things you think that, well, something could happen. Well, I kind of thought that, and I bought 2 vehicles just out of the blue. Get rid of that one. First off, I bought a daily driver, which was the car in the background. I was living at these people's house, their extra house they had. I was renting it from them. That's 1997. And that's a 92 Cavalier RS in the background. I was driving it every day. And I bought this ragged GT, which did not have an engine or a transmission. It was an 88. And I knew the guy had that car, and he had raced it and raced it, raced it, raced it. It was this maroon color, which was not original, and had red interior, which I did not like. So anyway, after all that happened when I wrecked the other car, I finally scraped up the money to put an engine transmission in it, or have one available for it. That's another view of it. Boy, it was ugly. And I actually, believe it or not, I painted that car and fixed it up and restored it. That's the color. That's not a factory Ford color, but I was in love with this two-tone stuff here. So anyway, I painted that all by myself. It was not a very great paint job, but it looked acceptable. I put an engine transmission in it from another Mustang that was just wrecked. I did all that myself, and I swapped the interior over all myself. I put a late model dash in it, late model interior, gray interior, so it looked really nice for what it was. So I kept that car a couple of years and drove it, and it ran pretty good. And what happened with that car? I think I ended up sold it to this guy, sold it to a friend of a friend, and so I was without one for a while. Oh, I know what happened. I'm having to remember here. I saw this car sitting on a used car lot. So I fell in love with this car. This was a 1990 LX 5.0 coupe with a 5-speed, and very nice, very stock car. It did not have the 5 stars on it. It had these just regular phone dial wheels on it. There's another burnout right in front of my house I lived in at that point. And so I had to hurry up. I traded in the Cavalier, and I sold the GT, so I had enough money. I had to still borrow a bit of money, but I got this car and loved it. Man, this was a nice car. It was a tight car. It ran good. It wasn't the fastest one I ever had, but it was nice. And I actually started spending some money on some decent stuff on this one. I put gears in it. I put full-length exhaust on it. I think I put a Mack exhaust on it. Fuel things to the engine, pulleys. That was it. It ran good though, and I drove it. I didn't drive as much as I had been, but I drove it pretty fair bit. And my buddy, he's still my buddy. I haven't talked to him in a while. He already had a '93 coupe. This is his. a lot like it. This was a pretty car. It was kind of a. It wasn't the color that was factory on that car. It was a little bit lighter of a maroon or a red, whatever. It wasn't bright red. It was a maroon. But it was a 5-speed with a black interior, and man, that was a pretty car. Man, he kept that car for a long time, and he drove the wheels off of it. I don't know how many miles he had on it when he finally sold it to a friend, but man, that thing was about worn out. Now, keep this in mind, because there was some horse trading went on, because this guy that had this car, he had an 89 GT before this one. And we kind of there's 3 of us involved in this, and you can guess who the third person was. You're not going to believe it, but it was. I'm going to tell you in a little bit. When all the dust settled off the horse trading, all 3 of us ended up with a different Mustang. So, and there we are parked in his garage. It's kind of a cool picture. There's another picture. We ain't going to get this in 20 minutes, I can tell you that. But this car had a sad ending in a way to it, and it was not the drinking thing was the DUI I had in the wreck. That was a life-changing experience. That quit me drinking and quit me going out and doing all that crap for good. I've never done that sort of stuff ever again. And what happened to this car made me into the very cautious person and very try to predict what could happen type person I am now. That was the second thing that happened, because I made a stupid mistake. And unless you're a stupid person, when you make one stupid mistake, you learn from it. And when you make 2 stupid mistakes, then it changes you, and you know, that turned me into being a person. I'm not trying to get into a psychological thing with you, but that turned me into being a person that no MFer is going to take me for a idiot anymore. I'm not going to let somebody take advantage of me, and I'm not going to let somebody steal something that's close and dear to me, and that was this car. And what happened was somebody stole the son of a bitch. And I'll tell you how it happened. Back about, I guess it was 2001. This is my daily driver. I've been driving this car for quite a while. And I moved to Birmingham with these guys, friends of mine from work. And we all decided to get an apartment together. They'd already moved down here. I came down later because I got fired from a job, kind of against my will. But I did. Got fired from the job. Last time I've ever been fired since then. That was 16 or 17, so that's 16 years ago. So anyway, got fired from the job and didn't have any place I had to go that day or that week or that month. So I decided to move in with them. So we moved to Birmingham down in Hoover in an apartment, which I hated. I never have lived in another apartment since then, and I hope I don't ever have to ever. But we did, and they like to go out and drink. And I was doing good. I didn't relapse. I don't have a problem with drinking. It's just not that. But I didn't let them influence me. Because, like I said, when I decided I was going to quit doing that, I was going to quit. I went out with them and we socialized and I hung around a little bit, and I might have like 1/2 of a beer. That's it. And then I ended up driving everybody home, you know. So unfortunately, I started getting the reputation to be the guy that was going to drive all the drunks around. And it took about 2 or 3 months of that, and I decided that's not going to be me. I'm not going to do that. I'm not here just to drive your drunk asses around. The hell with you. Excuse my language. But anyway, what happened was, one night, I got in my mind that I wanted to go down to 5 Points Music Hall, which is down a place called, believe it or not, it's called 5 Points in Birmingham, South Side. And I wanted to go down there and listen to a band that was playing that night. So none of the roommates wanted to go. They wanted to watch football or something. So I hopped in the car and I drove down and got down there. And what happened was, normally I'd always park right next on the main street down there. I'd park the car on the main street. Usually I rode with them. I hardly ever drove my own car down there because I didn't like driving down there in that car. But anyway, I usually parked where there's a lot of street lights and a lot of people. Thought, I'll be all right there. Well, I got down there, and being a stubborn person that I am, There was no parking places, but I decided I didn't drive all the way down here just to go back home. I'm going to park the car wherever I can find a spot. I stupidly, very stupidly, did not park it in a parking garage. There was one about a block away that was secure. I could have parked in there. I did not. I parked up a side street that had no street lights on it, and that's where I parked at. And I stayed in there a couple hours. I didn't drink. Came back out to the car, and there was no car there. There was a spot there where the car was. It had been. It wasn't there then. So I had, if you ever had a car stolen from you, you know the feeling you get right then. It's the oh, I am now Fucked. So went through all that, had called my roommates, and whatever time it was, come get me. One of them come get me. And long story short was, about a week later, they found the car somewhere, and they impounded it. So I had to go down to the impound garage and retrieve it. And whoever had stolen this car, and I'm telling you what, if you live in Birmingham, you live somewhere in that area down there, and if you're watching this video, you know who you are. If you stole my car, I hope one day I find you, because we have a score to settle, meaning you're going to get 10 across the lips and the eyes and the head and everything else. But anyway, whoever that was owned a Mustang, obviously, or they owned a strip shop, because when I found this car, they had put a different set of 5-stars on it that had ball tires on it. Mine were good. They took the exhaust off. They took the engine transmission out. They swapped the seats. They put some of those high back bucket seats out of the GTs, the old GT seats in it. And they seemed like they did something else to it. They changed the rear end out. So they swapped all the dud parts on this car. So brought it back to the apartment and parked it in the, put it in the lot out there, and covered it up. And right about then, I decided, you know, that was a profound experience, and I decided that number one, I no longer want to live in an apartment ever. Number two, I didn't want to live in Birmingham. Number three, I didn't want to live in Birmingham with those people. Number four, I was getting my AWS out and I was going home. So I came back and moved everything back home and lived with my mom for a month or so till I found a house to rent in Albertville, and moved all my crap up there and started over. So that car, that's what happened to it. That was a stupid thing I did. Very stupid. So after that, that kind of, I don't know, sort of, it didn't kill my interest in Mustangs, but it greatly diminished it. But I ended up selling that car, the body of it, to a friend of the guy that had this coupe. So he put it back together and kept it forever how long, and it disappeared, and I didn't have a Mustang. So in the meantime, I'm going to have to start over on this video on the second part of it, because this is so crazy interweaved together. You're not going to believe this, but this is how it went down. I'll tell you here in just a second, so let me restart this.